Hi, everyone, and welcome. It's Tuesday, it's noontime, and it's the Maine Take. My name is Dana Connors, and I'm pleased to be your host of this special program that we bring to you twice a month. It is our pleasure to have this opportunity to bring to your attention timely information of the people, the policies, the programs that work in our state to help keep you up to date and informed on the issues affecting you, your lives, and your livelihood. And I cannot think of a better person who can talk about all those issues and much, much more than our special guest today, Governor Janet Mills. Governor, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Let me begin by reminding our viewers that indeed, we do have a very special person with us today. She has a history of public service, a distinguished history of public service. In 2018, she was elected our governor. She was our first woman governor in our state. She received more votes than any other governor in our history. And she was the first governor since 1966 to receive a majority vote in her first term. That's pretty impressive, Governor.
Thanks.
That's nice.
Thank you.
I have to add to that if anyone was a witness to the inauguration that was held in January of 2019, then it was indeed an evening of celebration. The energy, the enthusiasm, the electricity that was in that room was unmatched. And you set forth a very ambitious agenda, and soon thereafter you started it. But what wasn't on that agenda was the visitor that we had that still lingers with us, that came to us on March the 12th and has occupied a lot of time and attention of those 2.5 years, almost half of your time as our governor. Mm-hmm. And while you were dealing with the challenges that was brought forth by that pandemic, you have been able to accomplish a number of very meaningful things for the state of Maine, such as the strategic plan, the climate action plan, the issues around education. They go on and on. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I'd love to begin by having you share with us your journey, the difficulties, the decision you had made, most notably during the pandemic, the impossibility of not having a game plan because there was no precedent for it, of matching the need for both health and the economy. And at the same time, with the anxiety and the frustration, I can't imagine what you went through in that time. So take us on that journey to begin with and share with us what it must have been like.
Thanks, Dana. Well, it was an odd time. It is an odd time still. We're still dealing with the pandemic. We haven't let down our guard, and we as a state cannot let down our guard. But I will tell you, I'm reading Michael Lewis's book right now, Premonition. It's really good about the pandemic preparedness that was going on 10, 15 years ago, first under George W. Bush and then Obama. Very interesting stuff. So, and they were originally talking about how if you tell people to stay at home, tell people to stay apart, this will help mitigate the effects of any new pandemic. Nobody took it seriously then until this happened. And so when I first issued a proclamation of state of civil emergency, it felt really awkward to say the least. It's not why anybody runs for governor. And nobody runs for governor to become the governor who bans weddings and funerals and graduations and 4th of July parades and Labor Day barbecues and closes bars. It tears at your gut to do something like that. But when people are dying and people are getting very, very sick, and hospitals and clinics were getting overloaded and overcome with this strange and unexpected deadly virus, those are the actions I and many other governors had to take. The travel bans, all kinds of things that happened on the national level, and the effects of those measures on the economy were obvious as well. And I want to thank Susan Collins and Angus King and our congressional delegation for coming forward and helping mitigate the economic effects of those measures that were necessary to save people's lives. But in the meantime, cruise ships gone. The Canadian border closed until today, for all intents and purposes, closed. That put an immeasurable crimp in the economy as well. So I was concerned every day with the health and safety and the lives and livelihoods of Maine people. But I want to say I had the best people around me, a staff that never quit, a cabinet of people with intelligence and persistence and creativity. We brainstormed every day about new and unusual, terrible problems, and they came up with solutions. And so I can't thank them enough. Heather Johnson at DECD, Jean Lambrew at HHS, and Nirav Shah, everybody got to know on TV. First, we thought, well, we put them on TV and I was on with them, we might be offending people because we're cutting into some soap opera time there in the afternoons. But he quickly became the counter hero to the soap opera crowd. They loved him. They still, people ask me about him on the street every day. And we're so happy and lucky to have him on our team. So that happened. Then I got cards and letters and emails, thousands of them from Maine people across the state, little kids and older people who were, staying in a bubble for the most part all that time. And they would write me letters and cards. And one young gal, a 10-year-old from, I think, Bangor named Savannah, she wrote me last winter and said, I hope COVID-19 doesn't affect our hearts being isolated from one another.
Wow.
Isn't that nice? And I wrote her back and I said, we are staying apart physically, but we are coming together and staying together as a people and as communities and as families. And I hope your family stays healthy as well. So it was heartwarming to get notes and cards like that every day from people all across the state.
Well, you said it well. We do in times of trouble, not to reference a song, but in times of trouble, we really do learn a lot about ourselves and others. And I think it brought out the best, for the most part, in Mainers. It really illustrated their commitment to one another, your leadership, and you credit the team, and many of us credit you because every team needs a captain.
Thank you.
With facing the issue straight on, being honest with us, being accessible to us, that means a lot. So that's.
Well, you and I and your membership had several very tough conversations.
Yeah, we did. But, we always did it with respect.
Yeah.
That's
Thank
important. Let me shift because it's important to dwell on that, but I confess one of the I feel most significant issues that at the time was important, which is a strategic plan. It was important to lay out a plan going forward because there are so many things that we could do, but what are those things that are most important? So you with the help of 1,300 people that came together, put forth a strategic plan that I commend you and all who participated in that because it's one of the most promising documents I've seen that served us as a state going forward, but was instrumental during the pandemic. When you commissioned the Economic Recovery Committee, that was the document that was referenced. Speak to that. Was that your great insight and anticipation?
Well, I'm going to credit Heather Johnson too and her team for developing that plan. It's the first 10-year plan in many, many, many years. I don't remember when there was when there was a strategic plan done before. And of course, many of your members and people across the state, 1,300, as you say, contributed to it. And that plan included a 10-year vision based on talent, attraction, and other economic measures. We wanted to grow, we still want to grow the average annual wage of Maine people by at least 10%. We want to increase the value of what we sell and produce per worker by 10%. And we want to attract 75,000 people to Maine's talent pool. We've always known these were valid goals, and now we sort of codified them and made them concrete. And we didn't forget them during the pandemic. One of the first things I did was to talk to some people that knew a lot more than I do about economics and financial forecasting. I talked with a lot of people whose names you would know, who've been in and out of Maine. One of them was Eric Rosengren, the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. I said, this was a year and a half ago. I said, we're looking at devastating economic effects of this pandemic. How do I plan to get to the other side? How do we as a state begin to move forward? And he said, quite frankly, you can't have a healthy economy without healthy people. So the first thing is to get the COVID virus under control. And that was our primary focus, obviously, and still is to a large extent. At the same time, I said, we've got to think about new ways of doing things. We know that the lobster and fishing industry is suffering because restaurants are closed and because dining rooms and cafeterias are closing and the cruise ships are not coming in. How can we do things differently from a supply chain angle, looking at the natural resources in aquaculture, agriculture, and the food chain, and how we distribute things, among many, many other issues. So I called together 40 people whom I considered to be very, very intelligent and experts in their areas, everything from technology to healthcare to hospitality industry, Republicans, Democrats, non-political. And they developed the economic plan, economic recovery committee back in November. And this was before we had the vaccine. So we're looking ahead. Everything was by Zoom, of course, but very productive. And that report focuses on the same goals and strategies of the economic plan we've done the year before, but also includes focuses on childcare, for instance, and again, technology and connectivity, which we then used to go to the legislature and then to produce the American Recovery Plan, Maine Jobs and Recovery Plan, using the $1.1 billion in federal money that Congress allocated to the state of Maine. We, unlike other states who received this money and said, gee, what do we do with it? We already had the plan and we put it together and with Heather and Hannah Pingree and Kirsten Figueroa's help, put this plan in front of the Appropriations Committee and said, here's what we need to do about it. Here's what we need to do with that money and how we can jumpstart our economy, childcare, subsidies for small business, health insurance, things of that sort that we're very much looking forward to implementing.
No, again, I mean, it was important at the time you put it in place and served us incredibly well during the pandemic, because as we all know, without a pathway forward, anything could have been a part of it, and it may not have served as well as what we have seen it accomplish. The other plan that I'll just highlight, which was actually accomplished during the pandemic in 2020, was your climate action plan, which yesterday we read how that we are in a very vulnerable place. And yet this plan shows that Maine won't work. We're not going to wait. I mean, Maine won't wait, I should say, and that we're going to put something in place that reduces it significantly, 80% by 2050. That puts us at the lead of the leading
Yes.
part of the initiative, I should say.
Yes.
I do want to get in. I know your time is precious and I don't want to take advantage, but I do want to get into the legislative session. And
Sure.
I'll be the first to say that I would characterize, with all the things that needed to be dealt with coming out of the pandemic, I was surprised with the agenda that I'll attribute it to the more progressive wing of the party, and was surprised when they put so many bills in front of you that you ended up needing, and you did, to veto 21, in fact. Many of those that stood in the way of growing our economy, in fact, would slow it down at a time when we needed to speed it up. Your reaction to that?
Oh, well, I don't think I would characterize bills that I vetoed as being either progressive or conservative or middle of the road. I think there were bills, I read, 635 bills that came to my desk. I read them and I found objections in various places to various bills. A number of them I let go without my signature. I believe I signed I think I signed 492 bills at last count. That's a lot of bills.
Yeah.
And a lot came to my desk. I vetoed 21. I let go without signature, I think 122 bills. And some of them I wrote letters on, even though I let them go without my signature. I'm letting this go, but here are some problems that need to be addressed. Because I look at the legislature as a partner with the executive branch. We need to work together. It was really hard to work together with them on so many bills early on in the session where we could catch flaws that might be disclosed. It was also hard because there were so many concept drafts.
Yes.
I'm not sure why that happened, but it's pretty awkward for the public and people of Maine to know what a bill is really about when it just says concept draft. We are going to address student hunger. We're going to address climate change. And then you don't know what the bill is going to do until you get to the hearing and somebody finally brings in a draft with real language. That was really difficult and frustrating for many, many people. And then, of course, meeting by Zoom. The committee's meeting by Zoom made it very tough. The legislature had a lot of energy behind it. There was a lot of energy, and they wanted to do and accomplish a lot of things. And I think they did accomplish a lot of things. And I think we did that with them. There were a lot of, look at climate change alone, which ties into the economy, because we know, we emphasize green collar jobs, clean energy jobs as being part of the attraction to the talent pool we need. But just in the climate change area alone, there was the Green Bank bill, there was reducing and addressing HFCs, the PFAS bills, and the money that we're putting behind solving the PFAS problem, the community resilience measures, addressing sea level rise, healthy soils program, all those things got to be done by consensus pretty much, and with my approval. Energy storage as goals of the PUC, things like that. So yeah, there were some problematic bills, 21 of them to be exact. But if anybody has questions about them, I think they should read my veto letters. We tried to be really exact in the veto letters about what the problems were.
Yeah.
Not just political.
In many ways, there were some rough spots during this session with majority votes on budget. And again, at the very end, we talked about the ARPA funds. But in the midst of all of that, to me, one of the shining moments and shining issues was the supplemental budget. The Appropriations Committee unanimously reported out that bill. It was a 2/3 vote in both bodies. And there were a number of significant initiatives, from revenue sharing to homestead to education funding. I mean, it goes on and on. I've got to believe you felt the same way, because it was remarkable. And I so felt that was going to be exactly the approach when the ARPA funds were presented, because it did reflect the ERC recommendations, the strategic plan, and I just felt certain that they would adopt that as a 2/3 vote. But
I was certainly hoping, and I was disappointed that they did not. But honestly, more than 95% of that bill was by agreement, by consensus of both parties on the Appropriations Committee. It's unfortunate that one or two things kind of hung it up and prevented it from having a 2/3 vote. But as you say, the real budget, the general fund budget, which people say, oh, you're spending so much money. No, it's not expenditures, it's allocating funds. We are fortunate to have increased revenues, very fortunate to have increased revenues. We know that's not going to last forever. I know that. I've been through good times and bad times on the Appropriations Committee and in the state of Maine, across the state of Maine. And that's why we socked away a couple $100 million, $223 million more in the stabilization fund. That's not spending, it's saving. Yes. We now have nearly $500 million in the budget stabilization or rainy day fund, all general fund. The federal funds that we're also very fortunate to have are in that separate document, basically, the American Rescue Plan, which, as you know, is going to jumpstart things as soon as it takes effect in less than 90 days now.
And again, you mentioned this, but I want to revisit it for just a moment, and that is our delegation, as part of an overall effort, did their work well in providing for us, as well as other states, federal dollars to help us recover from the pandemic. And I commend you for using those funds wisely, from broadband to all the things that we've talked about here today, to help us recover in ways that we're not bearing costs into the future, but we're really more a stopgap to help us in the moment.
Yes. And another thing we didn't mention, which I think is a huge success, is the Maine Connectivity Authority.
Yes.
I don't believe any other state has done that. We knew there was federal money coming down the pike for, we call broadband, but it's really broader than that, connectivity in general. We just appointed, right after the bill was signed, and it's an emergency bill, I made the appointments. They were confirmed by the EUT committee, and I'm very excited about that too. We're going to do broadband connectivity, but we're going to do it in a smart way, in a way that makes connectivity affordable for Maine consumers.
Yeah, you know, and again, I know I need to wrap it up, but I must say that at a time when we're really struggling with something that's unprecedented, there is no playbook to go by, that when you look at where we were when we started this journey with the pandemic and where we are today on the issues that we have to help us recover, the direction that you have taken focused on public health, we have a lot to be grateful for, and we thank you for that. I do want to ask this final question, and that is, are you having any time for yourself? Are you flourishing? Are you doing some things that are actually fun, shall we say?
Yeah. I just got off 2 weeks vacation, but I tell you,
nice.
it was sort of a working vacation. It was in Maine, but it was on the mid-coast area, and I met with so many people. There were a lot of visitors to the mid-coast and to Maine across the state during the summer, and some very interesting people. And everybody wants to do things in Maine now. It's not just people coming here and buying real estate and upping the property values, but it's people who want to invest in our state and in our economy. And it's very exciting. Sometime when we have a chance, we'll have coffee, and I'll tell you all about it, because you're going to be delighted. Some of the contacts I've been making with people who are not only coming here to visit, but coming here to stay, wanting to start businesses here and invest in our people. I'm excited, very excited.
Oh, that sounds great. And I guess you can say to every cloud, there is a silver lining. And for this pandemic, people have seen Maine in a whole new light, and we're grateful for that.
We are the safest state in the country.
We are.
Safest state in the country, with our lowest crime rate, high vaccination rate, low case rates for COVID. And now with the Canadian border starting to open, the doors starting to creak open, we're going to be more than successful. I like to quote William Faulkner in his 1950 Nobel Prize speech, where he talked about, man, I say Maine, not man. Maine will not only endure and survive something like a pandemic, but we will prevail and become stronger and better than ever. Before I say goodbye, I just want to ask for your prayers for Chris Johansson and his wife, state legislator, and they are suffering with COVID. And he's been on Facebook, we don't agree on much politically, but I don't want to see anybody suffer from COVID. And I hope that your members will please do everything they can to make sure that everybody they know is vaccinated.
Will do, Governor. Thank you for that. And thank you for all that you're doing. We're very grateful and appreciate for your leadership, your commitment, and your grit.
Thanks, Dana. Good to see you.
Bye-bye. Now let's turn our attention to our frequent guest. In fact, we have him on every time that we can. Peter Van Allen, editor of Mainebiz. And Peter has a special edition this week that honors 8 very remarkable women. So Peter, share with us what that's all about and the impetus.
Well, we were referring to our Women to Watch issue, and we're very excited about it. We have 8 very dynamic leaders this year, affordable housing advocates, a woman who turned around a hospital from bankruptcy, somebody who's helping, with diversity in the legal community, the head of a chamber. It's really a nice mix. And we were very fortunate this year. We got more than 130 nominations, something like that. Came up with 8 honorees. It's our largest class of Women to Watch honorees. Now, I should tell you that the background of Women to Watch is very interesting. So this program at Mainebiz started in 2009. And at the time, our publisher, Donna Broussard, who just retired this past March, and my predecessor as editor, Carol Coltis, started to have some discussions, and they were looking at the covers of Mainebiz, and they said, boy, there's a lot of white males on the cover of Mainebiz. Where are all the women leaders? And they really, sought to come up with a way of, looking at these success stories and people who are doing well and making a mark. And so that program started in 2009. That was the first Women to Watch program. And in addition to the print edition that we do in the profiles of each of the honorees, we have a big event in September, and it's our most well-attended event. And it's a great kind of networking event. So this year we're in our 13th year. We've now honored 63 women leaders, and it's been pretty neat to see. They're from a range of backgrounds. Of course, we've tried to bring as much diversity within that as we can. We also try to draw on people from throughout the state, different industries, and for-profit, nonprofit. So it's been quite a journey with this, but we're very proud of the 8 that we have this year and the program that we have going. I appreciate you bringing light to it, Dana.
Oh, no, and I think that the very point that you're making about why it's in place and the value it serves in terms of equity is extremely important and not to be forgotten. As we honor these 8 women and the previous for a total of 63, that's very special and it deserves celebration. And I thank you for bringing that to our attention to allow us to share through a different medium. So thanks, Peter.
There is, it's interesting, Dana, because there is a camp that says, here it is, it's 2021. Why do we still need a program like this? And it's something that, different people have brought up at different times. And so I guess our counter argument to that is, there's still a pay gap, a gender pay gap. When you look at the boards of a lot of different businesses, it's still, predominantly white males. And so we feel like it's still viable. And if we get to that point, ideally when it has run its course and where it's not as relevant, then we'll go a different direction at that point. But I think that, it's still very viable. We feel like it's an important program. And I think, the event that we have and the amount of interest we have, I mean, this year we had over 120 nominations. I think there's still a lot of interest among our readers.
Oh, indeed there are. And you can, and again, I repeat myself when I say this, but I think it's marvelous to bring it to our attention because we all get caught up in this world of constant effort and your work becomes your life. And next thing you know, time flies by and you don't stop to appreciate different things. This puts in front of us women who are really making a difference and the issues that accompany the gender gap, if you will, the pay and other considerations is important. Those people that you have honored are definitely leaders today, and even more, as you say, they are ones to keep your eye on because of the promise they bring, and they do to not just today, but to every day. So right. No, I thank you and Mainebiz for bringing it forward and keeping a spotlight on it. It's very important.
Thank you. Thanks, Dana. Thank you. It's a great show. It's really really neat to hear Governor Mills and what she had to say. And I for one, I'm going to be very interested as these details emerge. At the end of the conversation, she was talking about all these people she was meeting on the Mid-Coast, and there are people moving here and investing here. I'm going to be keeping a close eye on what develops out of that.
Well, and the other thing too is a number of the initiatives that got put in place, broadband's a perfect one, are the very things that will help keep those people here. So they're not just vacationers or here for a few, as important as vacationers are, don't misunderstand me, but they'll keep them here on a permanent basis because we do know that talent is an important aspect, and it's one of the major ingredients, the two principles within the strategic plan. We need more people, and we need to prepare those people for the skills needed for today's economy. So no, it's as we like to say, that's a win-win.
Yes. That's right. That's right.
Thanks, Peter. We look forward to 2 weeks having you back on, and we'll talk about something at that time that'll help keep issues in front of us and be as positive as you always are. So thanks.
Thanks again, Dana. Appreciate it. It's always a pleasure.
Pleasure's ours, Peter. The takeaway for this week, well, I guess more than anything, we hope to put the spotlight on women of influence, women making a difference, and who better to do that than our governor. When you think of her history that she brought to this position that she occupies today, that is impressive. But when you consider that she's our first woman governor, she received more votes for governor than anyone in our history, and she's the first to receive a majority vote in a first term since 1966, when Ken Curtis beat the incumbent at that time, John Reed. That's very impressive. And so wasn't that inauguration night in which you could feel the electricity in that room, in which an ambitious agenda was put forward. And yes, in the course of these many months, this 2.5 years in which we've fought the unpredictable pandemic, a lot has been accomplished. And we talked about it today, from broadband to a strategic plan, to climate action plan, to funding for education, for revenue sharing, for a lot of things that were needed in this economy. But it has been, to a degree, kind of overshadowed perhaps by something that has occupied almost half of her time in office. And it came to us unexpected, without history to serve us, lessons learned, that is, from history, and certainly with no playbook to guide us. It was, of course, the COVID-19 virus. It was the pandemic that we've experienced for the last 15 months. But as she said, using science with a very competent, dedicated staff, and with her own determination and conviction, trying to balance that very delicate, those issues of public health and economy. Today, we can look back and recognize we're not through it, but we've got a lot to appreciate. We are the 4th lowest state in deaths as a result of COVID-19. You learned yesterday that 80% of our adult population has had at least one vaccination shot. And we are 3rd in the nation when you consider our population having full vaccination. That's something to take note of, as well as the fact that it was Moody's that not probably 3 months ago that at that time said that Maine was on the leading cusp of recovery. We were 85% recovered to where we were before the pandemic. Yeah, there's still, the challenge still looms out there, and we're all very concerned about that. And the economic challenge still persists. The economy is so much better than it was a year ago. In June, at this time last year, it was beginning to show its strength again. But in May and June, we were suffering. And we still have a challenge today, but the challenge today is the workforce issue and the supply chain. And you hear that throughout our state. But I must say that through all these 15 months, thereabouts, not to be denied or overlooked, and perhaps I'm stating the obvious, as was pointed out today, the pandemic has caused a lot of anxiety, stress, and with it, some criticism of the administration, the governor, and her team. I guess I would ask all of us to be mindful of this. It's so much easier to know what to do when you're not accountable for your actions, when you're not responsible for the results. And this governor, like any governor, does not have that option. They do not have the luxury of evading, of ducking the issue. They are front and center and responsible for every decision that's made. Yes, it's sometimes you can't win for losing when you're trying to balance two extremely important issues for all of us, and that is economic health with public health. But as she said today, and we heard her say it often, you're not going to have economic health without public health. I think we all know through this experience that yes, we've had our issues, but we are stronger because of it. People see us in ways they didn't before from out of state. We are strong, we are resilient, and we work together. And certainly on behalf of those who make the decisions, like our governor, it takes leadership, it takes commitment, yeah, and it even takes grit. And we owe her a lot of credit. We owe her and her team much that we should be appreciative of, and we are. We also heard from Peter Van Allen, our regular guest on the show, and we're pleased that is the case, that Mainebiz honored 8 very remarkable, incredible women leaders of our state. As he said, they represented healthcare, affordable housing, chamber of commerce, equity and diversity in housing, even guiding services, higher ed, diversity and legal services, and certainly that entrepreneurial spirit that one saw a problem during the pandemic and created an opportunity to address. Yes, each are successful in their own profession and the things that they do. And all of them, as the publication noted, offer us promise for the future. They are and they will be leaders that will find that success in our future efforts. Yes, today we celebrated women making a difference, but it's more than a day. That's something we should celebrate every day. I thank them, and I want to be sure that they know it. That is the takeaway for this week. Please join us in 2 weeks as we look at other issues of the moment, maybe an eye on businesses in Maine that are making a difference, or that agency that's at work to try to help us move forward. Whatever it may be, I would ask you this. In a world where you can be anything, be kind. Be kind to yourself, but most of all, be kind to others. Until next time, 2 weeks from today, same time, and even the same place. I say good luck, Godspeed. I look forward to seeing you right back here at that time. Thanks, and take care.